I went to get some coffee on Thursday afternoon, and I got the coffee at a place that I had been getting coffee for the last couple of weeks that had these like really nice Christmas mugs with a nice little like decorative pattern on it. Thursday, 36 hours after Christmas is over, gone. All the Christmas mugs, gone. Christmas decorations, gone. I think that's weird. In the church, we're just getting started. The party is just beginning and will continue for 2 more weeks. So don't throw out your Christmas mugs yet. You don't have to take your decorations down. You can keep giving presents. If you find more presents, you can keep giving them. And we continue it today with this feast that we call the Feast of the Holy Family. Jesus, the miraculously conceived divine Son of God, Mary, his immaculate Virgin Mother, and Saint Joseph, who's not Jesus' biological father, but is entrusted with him by God to care for during Jesus' earthly life. 3 things we can learn from them. Super simple. The first is silence. We need more of it. Second, silence. It's really important. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but there's exterior noise and there's interior noise. If we can start to lower the exterior noise, you take your earphones out sometimes, maybe you don't put something on when you're in the car, maybe if you're inclined to talk, sometimes don't. We can start to become more aware of what the interior noise is. And even when we get rid of the exterior noise, there can still be so much interior noise that prevents us often from even just being aware of ourselves, and even more from being aware of the one who created us. Silence. Second thing is family. Family is really important, but it's often complicated and a little bit fraught. I was watching last week, there's a series of them, these Saturday Night Live skits called Best Christmas Ever. And one of them shows this couple, mom and a dad, sitting down at the end, Christmas night, everybody's gone to sleep, and they're talking about, wasn't this just the best Christmas ever? We had such a wonderful day, everything went great, everybody was so happy, and then it cuts back and it shows what really happened all day. We can sometimes idealize family life, we can idealize Christmas, we can idealize the Holy Family, for sure. Sometimes it seems like they're so nice and holy and they're in that pretty manger up there. Their life was really hard. It began with the king putting a hit out on their child. So they had to go to another country for 3 years where they didn't speak the language. Joseph had to start all over. Whatever craft, trade he had in Bethlehem and in Nazareth, he had to start over. He had to start a business in a country where he didn't have any money or speak the language, and his wife and his son didn't speak the language. Son didn't speak any language at that point. And then they come back. They raise Jesus in relative quiet. And then he's 12 years old. They go on their normal annual pilgrimage to Jerusalem to go up to the temple, as faithful Jewish people did. And you heard the gospel, they lost Jesus. And they didn't lose him in the store for 15 minutes. They lost him for 3 days. That's usually like when the county comes and finds you. If you haven't seen your child in 3 days. You can imagine Mary and Joseph turning to each other. We had one job. God entrusted us with himself, and we lost him. And then when they do find him 3 or 4 days later, Jesus is just standing there in the temple. And he's like, "Hey guys, how you doing? Nice to see you." And, the gospel tells us Mary and Joseph were filled with great anxiety. Their hair was turning gray in those days. It was terrifying. Joseph, we think, probably passed away early. We don't see him in the rest of the gospel after that account. And Mary went with her son to the cross. This was not some kind of shiny family where everything was going right all the time. We might, when we have issues in our own family, entrust them to this family, knowing that they've suffered too. They really know what it's like to suffer, to ask them to be with us in it. And the last thing they can teach us is about work. Jesus spent 3 years of his life preaching, performing miracles, letting who he was become known to the people around him. That's 3 years. But for the other 30 years of his life, he spent in silence. Nobody really knew who he was. He lived in a tiny town. He probably took on Joseph's trade. The gospel says Joseph was we usually translate it as carpenter. The word is tekton. Just means he was a guy who built stuff. Jesus built stuff. He had a workshop probably. He worked on a construction site. Nothing like super glamorous. People didn't know who he was. It's a good proportion. I heard somebody call that the Nazareth ratio. For every, it's like basically a proportion of 1 to 10. Proportion of like public stuff to like just being hidden. The Holy Family wants to kind of create in our own hearts, create in our church, and in our own homes, our community, a kind of a new Nazareth. A place where family can really be important, where there can be silence in which we meet God, and where we can work with a calm spirit. We don't have to idealize it. It's not easy. But we entrust these things to the Lord, and we ask him to be with us and our families.